What is going on, all you wonderful A-plussers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again with another Superman and Lois review. This time I'm going to be talking about Season 3, Episode number 5. Probably not my favorite episode this season, probably the weakest one we've gotten so far. However, that being said, this was still a very solid and very good episode. In fact, in a lot of ways, it was a very needed episode because, the last 4 episodes had been quite intense, so we really, needed this little breather. And this is definitely an episode that is light on all the Superman stuff, but very heavy when it comes to the character drama, and I think it does that extremely well. So as you guys know, when I break down these episodes, I don't necessarily go in chronological order. I just go by events and characters, and I do them like kind of one at a time. So first, I want to kind of start out with talking about Sam and Natalie in this episode and how the two of them have continued to kind of bond over the last few episodes. Like I mentioned kind of in my review for episode 1, Sam did kind of want to get to know her because he knew that, in her universe, he was his grandfather, so he is basically trying to be kind of a grandfather to her in this universe, and doing a pretty good job. Like, obviously, there was that rough patch in the first episode where it turned out he, kind of wanted to recruit her, convince her to join, like, the DoD program in Metropolis, but of course, the moment, he realized how much of an asshole he sounded like by doing that, he immediately apologized, and the two of them kind of, got to start over, and now we kind of get to see that relationship building. I do really like the chemistry the two of them have, and it's kind of funny to think that it seems like he has more in common with her than he does with his own grandchildren. I find that kind of hilarious. The other thing that kind of happens with Natalie is that Matteo from Metropolis, from the party, I believe it was like in episode 2 or 3. No, I think it was episode 2. He comes to visit, and so he's being incredibly nice, which is probably why Sam Lane seems to be very suspicious of him. Now, here's the big thing is that I was told, and I don't remember where I got this information from, so at this point I'm almost convinced, or I'm hoping this isn't true. I was told that he was supposed to be John Henry Irons' sister's son, right? So basically, in other words, Natalie's cousin, but given that he kind of appears in Smallville, and Sam Lane seems to be very suspicious of him, I find it very hard to believe that Sam Lane wouldn't do his own research on this person and then be able to find out. So I'm going to assume that wherever I got that information from, it's not true, and he's not actually Natalie's cousin. At least I really hope not, given the way this episode kind of goes. But basically, Natalie in this episode is trying to, she's trying to learn how to work with a relationship, essentially, because she has never been in a relationship on her Earth, and so she's not really sure what she's doing. And what I really like is going back to kind of Sam and Natalie bonding, is that even though Sam is very suspicious of Matteo, he does give her some, relationship advice to the best of his abilities, and it does look like the two of them could become an item, Natalie and Matteo, that is. Sam, on the other hand, what I find kind of funny, and also a little bit of a missed opportunity here, is that Jordan hooks Sam up with a dating app because Sam mentions that he hasn't been in a relationship in 30 years, and that was with Lois Lane's mother. So Jordan hands him a dating app, which is basically a Tinder for seniors, and I feel like there was a big missed opportunity here. You see, obviously, I know that Superman and Lois is not part of the Arrowverse. However, in the Arrowverse, there is this dating app called Upswipe, which is a parody of Tinder. And I think it would have been hilarious if the app that Jordan gave Sam Lane was Upswipe for seniors, just as a kind of funny nod to the Arrowverse. Again, I know it is in a separate universe from the Arrowverse. I know that. However, you still have Arrowverse characters that exist within Superman and Lois. I mean, Superman and Lois themselves, same actors that appeared within Supergirl, and then not to mention you have Diggle from Arrow who appears in Superman and Lois. So even if they're not in the same universe, it's not that far-fetched to assume that some like apps could have existed in several different universes. I mean, hell, in the real world, Tinder is a thing, and apparently it's a thing in Superman and Lois too, which isn't our world. So if Tinder can exist in both worlds, so can Upswipe. That's all I'm saying. It was a missed opportunity for what could have been an awesome Easter egg. But that being aside, next character I want to talk about is Lana Lang, because she's kind of struggling a little bit as mayor, because people of Smallville are not really happy with the fact that she isn't really talking about Mayor Dean in the most positive light after his passing, and she seems to be ignoring a lot of the good that he's done in Smallville. However, at first she's really pissed off about this, especially because a lot of the good that he's done in Smallville, is debatably it comes from something very shady, as we still don't know exactly where these certain funds that he warns her about comes from, but it's probably a safe bet that Bruno Mannheim has something to do with it, just because of the way things tend to all kind of, line up together by the end of the season. So I think it is going to be safe to say that Mayor Dean may have had some shady deal with Bruno Mannheim at some point. But regardless, she's kind of forced to make this decision where she either exposes Mayor Dean, in order to, protect her own reputation, or, let him just die with people remembering him for the man that they want to remember him as, which is like the man that helped Smallville. So eventually she does decide not to go public with a lot of the corruption that Mayor Dean was doing. And I totally get that decision. It is a very challenging one, and it was made even more challenging when she runs into his son Junior at a diner, and he seems to be kind of blaming her for his death in a lot of ways, and then kind of claiming that she stole the election. But what I do like is that it's really just because he's grieving. He's not actually being a dick, or not. He's not trying to be a dick. He's just grieving. He has so much frustration and sadness. He doesn't know who to blame for it. And so I like that it ends up being Sarah Cushing that ends up talking to him about this whole thing, and then Sarah is kind of the one to kind of convince Lana not to go public with Mayor Dean about his corruption and all that kind of stuff. The next thing I want to talk about is Kyle and Jonathan. Again, kind of going back to one thing I really like about the season is kind of their Stranger Things type of approach to this. And what I mean is how in Stranger Things, one thing I like about that show is the different pairings you'll get every season. Instead of just sticking to one dynamic that works, one duo that works, they're always changing things up. And I think we could be getting something between Kyle and Jonathan this season based on how this episode went. So basically, Jonathan's girlfriend has finally found a new place to stay, and Jonathan can come visit her on the weekends because it's all the way in Topeka, which is apparently a 3-hour drive from Smallville. But at the same time, Kyle Cushing has offered Jonathan Kent a volunteer position at the fire station, which is only available during the weekend. So Jonathan is kind of forced to make this choice. This is probably one of the most relatable aspects of this show because, yes, high school is very challenging when it comes to deciding what it is you kind of want to commit to, whether you want to commit to after school activities or getting a job, getting money, working on the future of your career. It's so many decisions, and it sucks that you have to make these kind of decisions at a young age. And then the biggest thing about it, and this isn't me trying to say that if you're in high school, you shouldn't try to have a relationship. If you have the opportunity and it's someone you really like, go for it. But I am going to say this, having a girlfriend in high school really complicates things and makes it even harder for you to make these kind of decisions. So Jonathan having to choose between basically being a good boyfriend or, his actual future, those are the kind of decisions you have to make. And I'm not trying to say that it's anyone's fault when this kind of stuff happens. It's just the way life works out. So luckily what I like is the way they've been writing Candace. They really don't want her to come off as an asshole or anything. So I do like how she basically kind of tells Jonathan, hey, I know it'll be challenging for both of us, but I think you should take the position that Kyle's offering you, and plus we have seen Jonathan kind of work it out with his previous girlfriend through, Skyping and that kind of stuff, even though she did end up breaking up with him at some point. Candace doesn't seem like she's the type of girl that would do the same thing. So I do think that she and Jonathan can make it work based on how we've seen her character written this past season anyways. So Jonathan decides to take Kyle up on his offer, and I really hope things work out for him because I do kind of like this direction that they seem to be taking his character. The next thing I gotta talk about. So first, obviously, I'll get a little more into Lois Lane after I talk about this part. But basically, Lois Lane is going in for her cancer treatment, and while she's there, she's of course doing some snooping around, trying to find out what she can about Bruno Mannheim. And while she's doing that, we have Clark talking to other cancer patients that are getting chemo at the moment. And what we get is kind of like a conversation between him and two other patients, and they are essentially preparing him for some of the worst case scenarios. These are people that have been coming in for treatment for a long time. One of them even kind of lost someone who had previously been coming in for treatment. I believe she said it was her daughter. So these are people with a lot of experience. The other one had originally, had cancer and beat it supposedly 5 years ago, but then had to deal with it coming back just a couple years, or just a couple years later, which unfortunately happens a lot. So the one of the big things that they warn Clark about is something called the pull, which apparently is just, a thing that happens when people get treatment. Now, something I should probably mention is that I'm not really the right person to fully comment on this, because I myself have never really known anyone in my life, like, except for in high school. I have had a couple of friends that beat it when they were young, but I didn't know them when they were going through that. So essentially for me, I have never actually, known anyone getting treatment for cancer. I don't know what it's like to kind of go through that, but watching this as a viewer, so keep in mind, if you think that I don't have the right perspective to comment on this, definitely let me know in the comments below. But as a viewer who has no real life experience with this, this scene did come off as extremely genuine. And this is where they mention this thing called the pull, which I don't know if it's a real thing or not, but I guess it's just at some point it's very common for people getting treatment to just want to kind of give up and give in to the cancer. And that was the big thing that they tell Clark about, and that was the thing that kind of terrifies him, and why he doesn't want Lois kind of overexerting herself, because if she uses up all this energy now, it may stop her from wanting to fight later on down the line. So that being said, let's talk about Lois in this episode, because this was really the highlight of the episode for me. So, one thing I do find kind of weird is that before she's going to her treatment, one thing that she makes very clear when she gets back is that she really wants to chaperone this high school dance. Now, okay, again, I mentioned a few things like when it came to Jonathan and Jordan's birthday party, how a lot of the things that happen in the show, I don't know if this is just a small town thing, or if this is just a weird Superman and Lois thing. But there seems to be some things that kind of happen where I'm like, does this actually happen in real life? And one of those being Lois really wanting to chaperone this dance, and not because she wants to be an overprotective mother, but more that she just really wants to see her kids dressed up, looking sharp, and dancing with their friends and everything like that. I don't know, most parents that I've known in high school that chaperone these type of dance have always done it only because they've been part of the school council in some way, or because they just, no one else is doing it. I've never seen any parents want to chaperone a dance. This is something I've never seen before, but in the show, it seems like all the main parents, all the main characters in the show really want to be at this high school dance, which is just so weird to me. I don't know. Again, let me know. If you live in a small town, is this a common thing that happens? Are there really parents that are just this excited about chaperoning a dance? Now, yes, there are parents that I know, like my parents, when I go to a dance and I have a date, they love sending me off. They love seeing me take, my girl to the dance. Obviously, I say it like it's present tense, but you know what I mean. Back when I was in high school, obviously, is what I'm referring to. But I've never heard of any parents wanting really badly to chaperone one of these kind of dances. So I did think that was a bit bizarre. Again, let me know in the comments below if this is actually a common thing, but it's something that I've never experienced, but it's just something really weird that I really felt the need to point out. She is very determined to go to this dance after her treatment, but she goes into her second treatment, where she, of course, is really there so she can do some snooping around, trying to find out what she can about Bruno Mannheim, his hospital, the kind of shady business that he's doing, and of course the doctor that is currently working for him. But then, of course, like we all kind of expected from the events of the previous episode, she gets caught by none other than Bruno Mannheim himself. And what I love about this next scene is that he doesn't threaten her. I mean, kind of. I guess debatably he threatens her at the end, but on a legal standpoint, he does not threaten her. He instead tries to reason with her, and I just found this scene so fascinating. It was kind of like the scene with him and Superman, but with Superman, he was a lot more aggressive. You know, he was very much like, it was less about him threatening Superman and more of him just like really telling Superman how it is. He wasn't really trying to reason with Superman. He was just trying to tell Superman to piss off, pretty much. But with Lois Lane, I do like how he genuinely seems like he's trying to get through to her, trying to reason with her. And I love how it ends with him just kind of like saying that, yes, I built this hospital, you know, and I intend that everyone who comes in that gets the best treatment they can possibly get. So long as you're here, I will make sure that, you know, you get the best, that you will get healed to the best of my abilities. But the moment, you know, and this is what he says, like, the moment you try to stop me from doing my job, I will put an end to it. Now, that, of course, is where the actual threat part of the conversation comes in. But on a legal standpoint, not a threat at all. Just saying he's going to stop her, you know, which can mean a million different things. But he does seem very genuine in the scene because he talks about how his mother got cancer because there was a plant built in the suicide slums that no one knew about and no one wanted to write about after it was public knowledge. When he tried to come out about it, no one wanted to listen to him. They were like, oh, this kid from the slums, yeah, we're not going to listen to whatever he has to say. So he basically had to make a change in his community on his own. And Lois had always like seen this as there's not a single thing he does that doesn't benefit him. But then the way he kind of talks about is that it does seem like everything he does isn't necessarily just for him, but it is for his overall community and for the people that he cares about. So he is such a fascinating villain. And I really hope, you know, he's not full of shit or anything. Like, obviously he is a villain because we see him doing things that villains do. You know, we see him essentially experimenting on other people. But it's also not too far-fetched to say that he's doing this for kind of a greater cause in the end. And I would be very curious to see how this plays out. And if we end up kind of questioning if it makes us as the audience kind of question right from wrong. There was a theory I had heard from Cena Nerd podcast where they mentioned the possibility that maybe what his overall goal is at this point with all the experimenting he's doing on these supervillains or all these prisoners is maybe he is trying to cure cancer, and the way he's going about it may be wrong, but in the end, you know, his goals are probably pure. Now, again, we gotta learn a little bit more about some of the other stuff that he's been doing back when Lois used to be, you know, writing about him like before the events of the show, because you know, even before he started doing these experiments on prisoners, obviously he must have been doing some shady stuff before that. We just don't know the specific details about. So I really hope we get a little more insight to his backstory and Lois's backstory, like basically, you know, what happened between the two of them as the show goes on. But as of now, he is such an intriguing villain because right now I still don't know if I can call him evil. Now, I still don't like the way he went about handling John Henry Irons by immediately threatening to kill his sister, you know, the moment he saw he was in the city. I do think that was a bit extreme, and I kind of wish, in retrospect, the way this scene was written, I kind of wish they rewrote that whole thing in episode 4 a little bit differently. But overall, again, he is such an intriguing villain, and I'm really excited to learn more about him as the series goes on. Now, going back to Lois and Clark when they get back to the farm, Lois is once again trying really hard to attend this dance. But of course, Clark, after hearing, you know, what the other cancer patients had to say, he's worried about her overexerting herself, and he really doesn't want her to basically kind of give up so early on, or to basically exhaust herself and then, you know, be forced to give up very early on. He wants to make sure she has that drive and that drive continues to go and that she doesn't get burnt out very fast. So he does eventually convince her not to go to the dance, a mixture of him convincing her and her kind of eventually realizing that she is not feeling well enough to do so. But as this goes on, we then have our villain of the week, Deadline, who has infiltrated the DoD. Now, something I gotta point out about Deadline that I actually kind of like is that this is probably our first comic book accurate supervillain, at least in terms of superpowers, because when you look at, of course, Morgan Edge, not that I didn't like the take that they had on Morgan Edge, but he was definitely a very different version of that character than he was in the comic books. There's also the whole thing with Atom Man having superpowers, but I do like how with Deadline, his powers do match the powers that he has in the comic books, which is the ability to basically phase through objects. So Deadline and Superman are basically trying to battle. It's a very short, brief fight scene, but of course the whole fight turns out to be a distraction. Now, I do have a big nitpick about this fight scene, is that we see Deadline basically putting a device on the DoD computer so he could hack the computers for information. And when we see Superman enter the scene to fight Deadline, Superman looks at the computer, clearly sees that data is being transferred, and rather than, using his heat vision to destroy the device transferring the data, he instead tries to stop Deadline first. I thought that was really dumb of Superman. I think he should have gone for the computer first, destroyed that, or at least destroyed the device on the computer before going after Deadline. And it wouldn't have bothered me so much if, Superman didn't notice this, but the scene very clearly shows Superman noticing the device. So that was one thing. I kind of wish we as the audience didn't know about the device, or at the very least, I wish they specifically showed that Superman didn't know about the device, because it just made Superman look really, really dumb in this scene. So the only little bit of Superman that we got in this episode, I wasn't the biggest fan of. I'm going to be totally honest. Not the biggest fan of how dumb they kind of made him look. But regardless, it was an okay fight. And again, this wasn't a very Superman focused episode, so I don't think they were really trying to make it anything like amazing or anything like that. It was, again, just a very kind of just rushed Superman scene is the best way to describe it. But then we get the cliffhanger, which makes it all kind of worth it. So again, very slow-paced episode, not too much happening in terms of plot until the end, where we discover that the information that Deadline has stolen from the DoD was certain locations of important assets, one of those assets being none other than Bizarro, leading me to my theory on what we could see at the end of the season. So this kind of goes back to the very first time we were introduced to Bizarro, and he's wearing a suit very similar to the suit that Doomsday was wearing when he first appeared in the comic books. So basically there was that tease that Bizarro was going to be Doomsday, but of course that ended up not being the case. But you even had one of the writers of the show saying that Doomsday is going to be the villain of the season. And of course, a lot of people just shrug this off saying, oh, clearly he was full of crap and he was doing this to throw us off for, what we were actually going to be getting. But maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was foreshadowing for season 3. And here's what I'm thinking. Doomsday is a character where he's a Kryptonian that they would constantly kill, and he would come back more evolved and stronger, kill again, come back stronger. And right now, Bizarro is a dead body that they are trying to resurrect, seemingly. And what would happen if they resurrected him with him being Kryptonian? He might become a Doomsday-like character. So that is what I think we could be getting by the end of season. I think Bizarro could it could all come full circle, and Bizarro might become Doomsday by the end of the season. So overall, guys, awesome cliffhanger. Okay episode. I did enjoy it overall. I do think the good definitely outweighed the bad. And overall, I enjoyed it. But of course, this was mostly just a nice break, a nice breather after all the intense stuff that we've been getting the last 4 weeks. So at the end of the day, of course, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know your thoughts about the episode in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but of course, guys, above all, don't forget to keep it A+, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.